Hello, today is September 6th, 2024. I'm John George, and joining me are my co-hosts Emma McGaw and Slade Wright. Today we'll be talking about the Harris Balls CNN interview, the current state of the U.S. presidential race, new protests against the U.S. funding of Israel, and the DOJ investigation into Russian-backed misinformation campaigns here at home.
Yeah, so huge moment on the campaign trail as Kamala Harris and Tim Walz sit down with Dana Bash from CNN, giving their first full-length interview. I know that I think all three of us have some pretty mixed opinions on it, but we're definitely going to get into that. Yeah, I don't know what do you guys think? What was your guys like first impressions of this interview?
I think journalists right now, the way that they always seem to frame things from the right,
Yeah,
is incredibly telling as to where we're at as a country right now,
yeah.
and where the money is regarding media and corporate media specifically, and how that is going to be an incredible barrier to actually doing anything to heal this democracy.
Yeah, I think that like right off the bat, the first thing that I noticed was that every single question was framed like directly from right-wing talking points. And I think that there's some argument to like, well, it's good electorally that, she's addressing the things that the right wing is directly accusing her of. But at the same time, it's just disappointing. Like
I think
I'd love to dive more into how these policies can like affect people and, from a positive perspective. But, CNN is definitely ceding to the right in their framings. And honestly, I think more broadly, I think a lot of the Democrats have been capitulating to the right wing framing.
Yeah, I think I lost my train of thought.
that's okay.
I think that the Democrats take for granted their side vote, and they're trying to get more of the right-wing votes. I think that is I don't think it's going to be detrimental, but I think it's going to be negative. So I think not that we're going to see people who would have voted Democrat voting for Trump, but I think we're going to see people who would have voted Democrat abstaining from voting.
Yeah, I think so too, Emma. I think that's kind of I think this has been a long time strategy of the Democrats to like try to get those edge Republican voters. But in doing that, you're kind of ceding the strong, active base of support that you might have had you been giving back to your base of support.
I agree. I think the Democrats have been edging Republicans for a very long time, trying to get those guys on the margins. Don't make it. I realize now how that came out.
They're edging and they're gonna goon in November.
How does it sound like a Trump quote?
That's
a Gen Z Trump type. Oh my God, we are creating nightmares and horrors here.
Yeah. So I think real quick, just to kind of give some perspective on like some of these questions from the right wing. I think one of the questions I was the most like frustrated by is Dana Bash goes, so, you talk about the opportunity economy. You're aware that right now many Americans are struggling. There's an affordability crisis. And one of your campaign themes is we're not going back. But I wonder what you say to voters who want to go back to when the economy was better for them, like when groceries were less expensive and when housing was more affordable. As if that's not exactly what these policies are trying to do.
Somebody at CNN really thought they cooked with that question.
Yeah.
Like turning it on its. Oh my God.
Yeah, but like it's an
I
absurd
just wish...
thing. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry she doesn't own a time machine. She can transport the whole country back, but we're you know, this is in the context of having a pandemic for the last several years.
That's still ongoing.
That's still
and
ongoing.
is resurging even.
Yeah, but we're just pretending it's not
Because
happening.
we kind of stop. We're pretending, burying our heads in the sand, folks. That's our plan to deal with COVID.
What do you mean it's over? I thought COVID was over.
Hey, didn't we beat that already?
Don't we know that pandemics just end at some point?
That's right. At a federally designated time. You know, somebody go back to Europe and warn the 13th century folks about the Black Death and be like, if you get your king to say that it's actually over, it actually means it's over.
And it is, as far
Why
as the
didn't you ever
economy
try
is
that?
concerned.
And as far as the economy is concerned, it's over. But I mean,
so some of the other questions that Dana Bash asked, she was like, "So you've been vice president for 3.5 years. Why haven't you done these things already?" And then Kamala Harris gave an answer that I thought was fairly good. And then she says, "So you think Bidenomics was a success then?" Which is obviously this right wing framing that kind of I mean, I think this harkens back to like a few years ago when the Biden administration was really pushing Bidenomics as like a talking point, while everyday Americans were struggling like the most. And so it really didn't resonate well. I thought it was really bad politics at the time. And so I think this is Dana Bash like trying to tie her to that era of, or to those years of politics where Biden's approval rating was really bad and the American people weren't really feeling the effects of his policies yet. But I just think it's kind of gross because like she never said anything about Bidenomics, and even the policies that she's talking about at the time, like I mean, she's talking more about what she would do as president, which is obviously not Biden, or
right.
she's not the one saying Bidenomics here.
Yeah, and I don't think at any point she did say Bidenomics.
No, she never. Those words never came from her mouth.
And I think that was a good call.
Yes.
I don't think it's good to use that.
Yeah.
I do like the way she kind of, when Bash asked her that question, she kind of brought it back to what they did do and how Harris is going to expand on that. How, like, we laid some groundwork, and I'd like to expand on that and be able to move forward with that.
Yeah, I was just going to segue into how I thought she'd fielded that. And I think you're totally right, Emma, and that, like, I thought that her answers were really good to a lot of these questions.
Yeah.
When asked about Bidenomics, she said that she maintains that the work that she did of capping prescription medication, referring to the insulin cap of $35 a month. And then she's saying that we did that, that we extended the child tax credit that cut child poverty in half in the U.S., and the work that they've done investing in American manufacturing and bringing in new jobs. I thought all that was really good. Because like these were Biden policies that weren't felt immediately, like like what I was saying before. The U.S. wasn't feeling the effects of these policies yet, but now we kind of are, and so I think it hits a lot better. And it's also, I think it's really, I'm glad that she's centering these questions around policy. Because it's what Democrats win on. And when you can make policies that are clear and concise and materially benefit people, I mean, ideally, at least, they reward you for it, And it's like she's not talking down to the American public. She's highlighting her policy. She's highlighting exactly what she would do, which is something that the right wing has attacked her on, not having policies, which is a ridiculous attack when Donald Trump is your president.
Yeah, I think she does a great job at going into specifics.
Yeah.
Saying exactly what we have done, exactly what I aim to do, and I have never seen that from a Trump interview
Yeah.
where he is specific about what he has done and what he will do.
Oh,
It's all kind of vague
yeah.
things.
Could you
And
imagine?
I think Harris does an excellent job at bringing it back to, I want to say facts, like bringing it back
Yeah.
to facts, bringing it back to kind of what, because
Yeah.
that's one problem I
And
have
well,
with
and
politics in general is the vagueness of we're going to make this better for you, but never says what it is. So I appreciate that she says exactly what it is.
yeah, I'm
I think
100% with you, Emma.
I think also, however, getting too far into the weeds policy wise is maybe like there has to be a bit of a balance because like while you and I, if we read a policy proposal because we've been educated and trained to do this, we can make heads or tails of it. But like your average voter, if you present them with you know economic policy, is not going to understand it. These things are and that's not like a hit at your average voter. That's just simply like these are systems that are so incredibly complex that you could spend your entire life specializing them and
Yeah.
only ever really scratch the surface of it.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so I feel like it's incredibly hard to win off of just policy alone.
Yeah.
Um
I agree with you.
Unfortunately.
I agree with you. But I think there's a lot to say in that, like, a lot of her policies are very, like, you don't need to be a policy expert to understand them, right? $25,000 tax credit for first time home buyers. That's pretty easy to
Right.
understand. Like, the government is going to help you buy a house. They're going to give you $25,000 to buy a house. Child tax credit cut child poverty in half. I know that, like, Biden did not do a very good job of. I mean, honestly, I think that was one of the things he was better at communicating. But like that's a much more like that's a very tangible thing. You know, like
Right. And
it's
I
easy to
agree.
understand,
And
and I think she's done a good job of driving home these policies. And I think she's done a good job of selecting these policies in a way that like people can understand.
right, that's what I was gonna say is that Harris really strikes this balance.
Yeah.
And touts policies that are easy to understand. I think in my mind the most recent experience of it going the other way is in the weeks preceding Joe Biden's dropping out of the race. And because people were using his foreign policy speeches and saying like, "Oh, look, he can still do the job." And that's because, foreign policy is something that not a lot of people know about, not a
Right.
lot of people understand even. And so like if you just talk for 5 minutes on foreign policy, you can sound really smart
Right. People are
and
like, "Oh,
Mhm.
say
well, he
the
sounds like
absolute
he's got it under control."
right. But the second you know what's being said and you're like, "Oh, this is bad policy.
Yeah.
This is not going to work." And that's sort of what I'm trying to say is that she's really distinguished herself from Biden's handling on, it
Mhm.
pitching policy to the American public.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of it comes from well, I think this is somewhat influenced by the Bernie Sanders method, right? Where like this guy was on topic 24/7. You know, every single
Mhm.
time he spoke, every single time he got an interview, it was the millionaires and billionaires are buying everything.
Dang,
They own our
that's
politicians, and he was and
that's a good one. I like that impression of Slade.
thanks. Don't ask me to continue. I just have his millionaires and billionaires line. Um, but I mean that resonated with people, you know, and I mean, you know, call me a Bernie bro, call me a leftist, you know, whatever. But like, I maintain that he would have won that election had the DNC not so obviously rigged it for Hillary from the beginning, and I think it would have beat Trump too. Um,
Right, right.
and I think that proves that
I
like you can run on policy. Like these are things that people care about. And when you make it easy for them to understand, like when you repeat it and when you drive it home, like it does resonate with people.
Right. I agree. And I mean, like, I think that Harris has really learned a lot from losing campaigns,
Yeah.
Mhm.
especially with the fact that she isn't centering the race around her. Oh, this is a historic race, because if I win, I'm going to be the first black woman president. And
Yeah,
that is
I think that's really smart of her. I don't recall her mentioning it almost ever. I'm sure she has, but I like that she allows other people to mention it for her. I think it does better for her for both parties and for the general public. I think if she focused on it too much, it would alienate a lot of people. And I respect that she's just kind of letting herself speak for herself. Like she is focusing on the policies, she's focusing on what she can do rather than who she is. Like even
Yeah.
when she goes back on her story, she doesn't talk about like random things that kind of makes her who she is. She talks about the things, the experiences she's had that have influenced her policies, and she connects them and brings it back to that. Um, and so she makes it more about what she can do for the American people rather than what the American people can do for her.
Yeah. Like there
exactly.
was a
And I
direct
think
question that Dana Bash asked that kind of prompted her to talk about gender and um her being or gender and race. And she kind of, hand waved it away. Right? Like she
Mhm.
said, I'm running because I think I'm the best person for the job for the American public. And that's what the American public want to hear.
Yeah.
right,
um
and because I think there's a certain level to when you're playing the identity politics game, there's a certain level of novelty to it that goes away really fast. Because I
yeah.
Mhm.
remember 2016 very well, and I remember it being the race being centered around, you know, former Secretary of State Clinton. She's going to be the first woman president.
Yeah.
That at times felt like her whole thing,
Yeah.
and she certainly didn't try to detract from that. She didn't try to
No.
move onto like what Harris has done to pivot more towards I want this job because I'm the best for this job,
Yeah.
instead of I'm going to make history.
Yeah.
And that I think is really telling and has shown how far the Democrats have come in the last 8 years into
Mhm.
understanding how important it is to run on substance, and that just simply, checking off boxes is not going to work.
Yeah, and I think the people who would vote for her because she's a black woman can see that she's a black woman.
Right.
They don't need to be told that she's a black
Yeah.
woman, and she knows that.
Yeah.
Right, right. Because I think if Harris was playing, the pick me type stereotype, it would be disastrous
Yeah.
for the campaign, because we saw it be disastrous for a different campaign. And let's face it, a white woman had better odds than a black woman does, just all things being equal.
Hmm.
And
Mhm.
so I think it really goes to show that this was a major misstep by the Clinton campaign way back in 2016, and we're all paying for it because we all still have to hear Donald Trump every day.
Yeah, and even more so than in 2016, the Republicans have really leaned into this type of bigotry. Like they're calling her
Yeah.
DEI president, right? And so I think playing into that would not go well. And
Exactly.
it kind of seems like the Trump campaign is like baiting her into taking this route, and she's not taking the bait, which is fantastic.
Because she's too smart for that
Yeah.
for that
Mhm.
nonsense. She's not going to get dragged into a fight with an idiot, because she's too smart for that. And you can tell because it's infuriating Donald Trump that his personal attacks aren't working on her.
Yeah. There was a question in this interview. I'm not sure if you guys saw this one, but I think this is probably one of the most like clippable moments. It's probably like the most seen question among the American public. Dana Batch asked her about how Trump has been attacking her her identity as a black woman, right, saying that she's like flip-flopping or whatever. And she was just like the direct quote was, "Same old tired playbook. Next question." And that's fantastic. Like,
Yeah, that's the best
that's
answer
great.
that you could give.
That's great. You can't like don't stoop down to his level. Don't stoop down to his level. Run on policy. Run on the vibes of joy. And don't let him do that, because we can look at him and see that he's an idiot.
Doesn't take a whole lot of
and
insight to realize that.
And I thought that was really impressive from the Harris campaign to recognize that. So, props to them.
I think it's seriously because she's just a better class of politician than the Democratic Party has been for the last 8 years.
Yeah,
they struggled with Obama,
mm-hmm.
and then completely dropped the ball repeatedly because they're running. It's because it seems that in Democratic Party leadership, falling upwards is the only path to running the DNC. Like it boggles my mind that the DNC chairs consistently tend to be people who have lost elections, and so therefore had nothing better to do than to go and run the Democratic National Committee. I think it's there were so many advisors close to Biden who were urging him to stay in a race that he could not win.
Yeah.
And those people are,
they're old white men from a different era of politics.
They're exactly. And they still hold an incredible amount of power in the Democratic Party. And you can, in the messaging.
Yeah. But
because Democrats have sucked at messaging my entire life. To have watched them fumble as badly as they have in the past, it's a miracle that Barack Obama came along and actually managed to give 8 years of, of a Democratic White House. It was a miracle that happened.
Yeah.
And then they tried to catch that bottle again because they took the wrong.
And they were like, we're gonna go runner on minorities, and that'll be enough.
Yeah.
Completely ignoring the fact that Obama
we'll check a different box.
Yeah. And ignoring the fact that Obama was just like a magnetic, incredibly charismatic person.
Once in a generation. Once in a generation type figure.
Yeah. And they're like, well, we'll just do it again with Hillary Clinton.
And look at everything that's happened since. It's really hard not to look at the history of the last 8 years, and not be incredibly bitter at the Democratic leadership.
Yeah.
For allowing that, because it still seems to me that 2016 could have gone a different way, and we could have won, and we could have had, the America that exists now would not have existed if Donald Trump had lost.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Like, I mean that race was Hillary Clinton's to lose, and she did.
And it's terrifying to think that like Donald Trump being her opponent was considered best case scenario. Like when they had done all their research, they realized that Donald Trump was the easiest of the candidates to be. Like in a world without Donald Trump, we may have had, President Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if she would have lost the Ted. I don't know. Whatever.
I don't know. We don't know.
Hard to think about that.
Hard to think about that. But the point is that she did lose.
Yeah.
And it is the result of a series of very boneheaded decisions by Democratic leadership who have been in power for so long and have been dictating the messaging of the party and have been utterly terrible at it.
Yeah, and I think
absolutely.
on the other side of that, like the Kamala campaign has been doing great as far as like their messaging and like their engagement on social media. I mean, there's whoever's running that their social media engagement deserves a raise. And I think it's really interesting because it to me makes it seem like there was so much there's so much of that institutional framing in Joe Biden himself too, you know? Like there's been such a massive shift in messaging and online engagement from the Harris campaign when like you wouldn't really think that there would be that much of like a shift in strategy between a president and his vice president. You know, does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah. I have this is lightly related, lightly unrelated. I get all these texts from the like DNC texts and they're so bad. Like they try to motivate you to do something, but it's like I'm trying to think. The most recent one I got was like, "Are you going to let this happen?" And it's like,
Right.
"Fuck
Yeah, it's like
you."
let's shame the voters. That's how we win.
Yes, it's like, why do you think I'm going to do anything about anything? Why do you think I'm going to donate to your campaign when you're sending me texts like that? I don't know, that always bothered me. I got significantly worse texts from the Biden campaign though. I don't remember what they were, but I remember being like, this is just not going to motivate anyone. Like these are not beneficial to your campaign.
Yeah.
I feel like in a couple of years we'll get to do like a real good deep dive into the sort of exodus of Democratic Party leadership from the mindset of let's run these elections being relatively low stakes to seeing a Democratic Party that's like we need to win this and we need to win this now, and that's how you got the whole Republicans are weird line is from this campaign, and
Yeah.
that worked so well. And then you had reports of like Biden era Democratic advisors going like, you guys need to cool it on the calling them weird. And it's like, no, fire these people.
Yeah.
Fire the like I know that they're probably like, a couple of years away from retirement anyway, but still, like the fact that you are letting like perpetual losers run the DNC is having very cataclysmic impacts
Yeah.
on our everyday lives, and I'm so glad that finally we're seeing a divergence from that.
Yeah, I agree. There's I think we're moving away from the era of, they go low, we go high. My dad
I
and I
hope
were
so.
yeah, me too. My dad and I were talking the other day about I don't know, I was kind of venting to him about electoral politics. And he was like, "So what are you gonna do? Just call like a third of the country?" He's lifelong liberal, probably fairly to the left of the Democratic Party, but he's like, "So what are you gonna do? Just like call a third of the country fascists?" I'm like, "Yeah, do
If they're
that.
behaving like fascists,
Yeah,
yes.
one third is not a majority."
Hey, look, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a fascist.
Yeah,
And it needs to be called as such.
that's a
And I think
that's a long time John George line.
it's a
I,
long time. That is not the first time I have dropped that line. I love that line personally. I don't even know the genesis of that line. It's just one that's
It's a great
perpetually.
line.
hey,
It's a great line.
I'll credit it as a John George original. So
I
John
appreciate
George
that.
has some great lines.
I do have some great lines. Some of them we can't say on this podcast, but there are some good ones. I think also I'm going to use that for the title.
well, yeah. So
to go back on track.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think,
So like
however,
her,
I do have
Go ahead.
I do have some issues.
Yeah,
with
we need that. Wait,
with some of the things that came up in the interview.
real
Go
quick,
ahead
just to
then.
like top this off, I just want to say that like, Tim Walz was the originator of the Republicans are weird line.
Right.
And she took him on as VP, and I could not imagine the Democrats
You're
making that
telling me
decision
you're
anytime in the
telling me
last 10 years.
if I keep parroting that duck line, that fascist duck line, I could one day be vice president.
That's
That's
exactly what we're saying.
crazy. Actually, believe it or not, as since we're still talking about checking off boxes, there already has been a Native American vice president.
Oh,
Yeah, it happened 100 years ago.
who was that?
I can't remember. He's dead. But but yes, there was at one point. I believe it may have been actually under Hoover.
Charles Curtis.
Charles.
Yeah. Listen.
must-
Us Eastern natives, we all got 2 first names for our name. John George, Charles Curtis. The list goes on and on and on. So yeah, we actually have already had that, which is weird to think about. Because I literally did not know that until I was in college. I was like, damn, I'm like, I have to like know everything about Native Americans for the white people, like in order
I
to
feel like
listen.
I didn't know almost anything about Native Americans in like from school until college. Like I learned from like my family talked about it and stuff, but in school we learned almost nothing about Black people and Native Americans and any other minority besides women.
No, it's really bad.
Oh man, I mean, like I was still, I know this is a bit of a divergence, but I need to get this off my chest. Like I went to a mostly white elementary school. Well, I moved around a lot. I went to like 4 different elementary schools, but all of them were majority white. And let me tell you, Thanksgiving time. Oh
Yeah.
boy, I still have nightmares sometimes. Anyway,
You want to know what my school mascot was?
no.
Was it a term for Native Americans that is actually how you describe someone from another country?
No, but it was a derogatory term for Native Americans.
Let's
Are
go.
they an NFL mascot right now?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
No, but half of it.
Oh boy,
Oh, boy.
I certainly love playing Guess the Slur when
I remember at a pep rally, one of
Oh, no.
the kick line women, wore a headdress. And I was the only one who reacted to it. I like turned to all my friends and I'm like, "You're kidding. This isn't happening right now." And nobody was reacting to it besides me and a couple of my friends.
I haven't seen a white woman wearing a headdress in a very long time, mostly because I'm not into like the festival party going scene. But if I ever do, I'm going to make sure to ask who they killed to earn that.
I love that.
Because most of like the stereotypical war bonnets are signify some form of battlefield success. And so that's what I got to do next time I see one of those things. And I invite all of you, if you know a white person who is wearing one of those things, to ask them how they earned the right to wear that, specifically through deadly combat.
Yeah, will do.
Because if somebody goes around and says, "I killed 13 men in the hills of, I don't know, give me a place, Saskatchewan," then I might be like,
you know what?
you know what? I guess so. I got nothing for you. I was gonna try and pick a war-torn place, and for whatever reason, I was like, let's not be more racist. And
Yeah.
so I settled on Saskatchewan. So, you know,
All
because
right,
I'm also not a big fan of Canada. Anyway,
so what did you not like about the Harris interview, John?
well, funnily enough, related to that, the immigration talk.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ever gonna like immigration talk in any way because it's like, there's some personal uh generational trauma baggage with the whole, letting people in or not letting people in type deal. But I don't know. It seems to be. I feel like immigration is one of those areas that Democrats are going to consistently lose on to the undecided voter,
Yeah.
and I feel like ceding grounds there is bad, especially since you're getting wacko conspiracy theories about like Venezuelan gangs moving into Colorado and butchering places. Like we're playing. We're like in the Fallout TV show or something. We got roving gangs of raiders running around. It's
Yeah. It's really bad.
it's
I think
it's bad.
it's honestly, it blows my mind how bad the Democrats are on immigration. Like, I don't know how they haven't done anything to combat this narrative that, like, yeah, like we were saying, there's these roaming gangs of, drug overlords that are sending people into our border when it's just that. I mean, it's complete nonsense. None of the data backs up that 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 fentanyl is largely coming through illegal immigration. Like, I think it's either 80 or 90% of fentanyl comes through legal points of entry. Like, they're coming through from American citizens, not illegal immigrants. And it makes
Yeah.
sense too that if you're trying to get drugs into a country, you're not going to send it through people that are probably not going to be able to get into the country, right?
Right. You're not gonna select the guy who's most likely to get checked for random
No,
for random searches.
you're gonna ferret it through the most white person you can that goes through this border every day.
Some guy named Brad.
Yeah, yeah.
You
And so there's that. Like, there's the fact that illegal immigrants commit violent crimes at a drastically lower rate than native-born citizens.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Democrats have completely ceded that whole area of debate to the Republicans. I mean,
I
yeah.
I do want to say one thing. So I have a lot of opinions about immigration. One of the things that I don't think many, if any, politicians discuss. So they talk about seeking asylum and things like that.
You
And in
you
this
mean from insane asylums, right? When you say that.
the late great Hannibal Lecter would like to have you for dinner.
and so like Harris was asked about this, and part of her answer was that if you break the law, you're going to be prosecuted. That's kind of her thing. One of the things about seeking asylum is you have to get into the US somehow. You have to be in the United States to seek asylum, and you can't be a US citizen. So that is the way to seek asylum. Come into the US and apply for asylum. That, in my opinion at least, is the right way to do it if you're seeking asylum. And in general, kind of the way she talks about immigration, I think is gross. She talks too much, in my opinion, about if you break the law, you're going to be prosecuted. Meaning, if you cross the border illegally, if you cross the border without paperwork, you're going to be prosecuted. And just based on my opinions on immigration, I think that's a little disgusting seeing the kind of people who are crossing the border, people who are fleeing for their life, for their children's lives, trying to get something better. in any of my experience, non-Native Americans, well, non listen,
Native born
non-American
Americans.
born, yeah, non-American born people work harder, are happier to be here, and like you said, break the law less. And I think that trying to put restrictions, increasing border patrol agents, I don't like that. I think that it's the wrong tactic to take. Harris has mentioned, which I do like, that she wants to make it easier for legal immigration,
Yeah.
but she's making it significantly harder at the same time.
Yeah.
I guess this is one of those things where we'll have to see until we have some, actual policy, because as of right now, it very much reads like she is saying these things because it's, she's trying to court undecided voters in swing states right now who are notoriously very fickle and very wishy-washy, and they just like hearing certain things, and she's got to say those things
Yeah.
to get their votes.
Yeah. So
because
what I
we
was
have to win
It
this.
is a great political tactic, and she's doing very well with politics.
Yeah, I agree. What I was just gonna say is like, and we talked about this a little bit before the podcast started, but you kind of have to look at this interview through the lens of like, what do we want? Like, what do we want to happen policy wise? Like, us personally, us more on the left, certainly the Democrats, and then what's good electorally, and through the electoral framework, like, I mean, at this point in the race, I think it's pretty hard to build up to combat the right wing narrative that's been established, as unfortunate as it is, and, how much I want to shake Joe Biden to death at this point. Over this. Not because I want to kill him, just because he would die.
Right. For the Secret Service
it's
agents
you know
listening.
it's probably the right move to come be like, posture yourself as a tough on crime candidate. It kind of fits in the narrative of her being a lawyer versus Trump as a convicted felon.
Yes.
And also, like, I think it's a pretty great talking point that there was this right wing border bill that the Democrats were fully on board with, that Joe Biden was ready to sign into law, that Trump killed personally.
Yeah.
Right. And this was several months ago. This bill was slated to pass that would have increased funding for the border. It would have put in more federal agents, like you were saying. It would have capped the number of entrants into the border per day. Like, the border would stop processing migrants past a certain number. It was a super right wing bill, and it was going to pass until Trump personally called up Republican senators and congresspeople and said to vote it down because he thought it would be a win for Biden.
The stranglehold that man has on the Republican Party is
It's
truly
absurd.
just sad
I
to
think
watch. It's like watching like my friend go back to her shitty boyfriend repeatedly, and then like come back a couple of weeks later and be like, so and so is a bad boyfriend. I was like, well, yeah, that was kind of why you left him. The first 3 times. Maybe make it stick this time, huh? It's the same mentality, and it's a true train wreck to behold, and it's hard to look away. But at the same time, I'm getting so sick and tired of hearing Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I think that goes for a lot of the country, and I think we're seeing that right now. Yeah, so I'm not in favor of these policies, but it's probably the right move, and I think that should field the question pretty well from an electoral standpoint. It frustrates me to say that, but I think it's probably the right thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't personally like a lot of what she has to say, but I think she's doing a great job politically. I think she is like she's getting her point across to the right people,
Yeah, and she's bringing it
and
back to
she is,
policy, right?
yeah, she's using the right words. She's doing what she has to do to get the vote, because honestly, you can't do anything. You can't do any good unless you're in office. And so I don't like it, but I understand it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think like the natural segue from that is into the next question, where she was asked about her policy with Israel, um,
Mm.
where she said that she would, um, I mean, basically not move in policy. She reaffirmed her commitment to Israel's defense. She brought up October 7th. She leaned into the idea that there was like this mass systematic rape on, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that
Yeah.
on this podcast. Um, that happened on October 7th, which is like, I mean, there's a lot of misinformation swirling about that. It seems like
Yeah,
that like
she
maybe
said that
happened,
several
but
times, and
yeah,
I have
I'm
I've personally heard a lot more of those kinds of things come from Israel, not from Palestinians.
yeah, yeah. But you know, she pretty much stuck with Biden. I think that's obviously going to upset us and many people in the country.
That's
But again, it's
I think it's the right thing to do politically,
maybe.
but again, I don't like
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So
Like,
I think the factors going into this are that she doesn't want to alienate uh Jewish voters. She doesn't want to
mm-hmm.
break from the Biden administration that she's currently a part of. You know, it'd be pretty unprecedented for a VP, like a sitting VP, to break from their president. I think we
especially
can.
one who has earned so much goodwill in the last couple of months by stepping aside.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Joe Biden right now went from a name that Democrats were dragging through the mud, rightfully so,
Hmm.
to one that they're revering because he did the right thing.
Yeah,
And I
after
think
being
it's
completely
important
strong
not to
armed by
burn that.
everyone around him, it had to be basically forced. Anyways,
Like
Yeah,
like Nancy
does he deserve
Pelosi.
it? Probably not. But yeah, it's a narrative we're going with.
I think I think though I think because of the fact that this is a developing situation and now that a new school year has begun, so student protests are back, and the fact that earlier this morning an American citizen was killed by Israel,
Yeah.
um that we're going to see. Well, I think it's too early to say if this is going to result in any substantial changes regarding policy, but the last time the last documented instance of an American citizen being killed by the IDF was in '03.
Wow.
20 years, a little over 20 years ago. So
And was this person like an aid worker?
no, it was another protest because aid workers don't count. You have to remember that aid workers don't count when it comes to these statistics. No, this was just somebody who was protesting this Israeli settlements in the West Bank, which is exactly what this young woman was doing when she was, gunned down. From the CNN article that I read before we came on here today, it appears that she was shot in the back of the head while running away.
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, they had talked about how they just kind of the IDF said that their forces, quote, responded with fire toward a main instigator of violent activity who hurled rocks at the forces and posed a threat to them.
How is that even like? Isn't like the throwing rocks at tanks like already a pretty bad narrative for Israel? I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe they're just playing some really fucked up game of rock, paper, scissors.
God.
I think they need to start throwing scissors.
But yeah, I
Yeah, it's
I don't know. I'm hoping that this results in a shift towards U.S. policy now that an American has died needlessly because the Israelis are trigger happy.
I don't think
I'm
we're gonna see too
really
much in the next in like the immediate future. I think there's a chance she starts to break with him, break from Biden. When we get closer to the election, I think she's worried about APAC money.
Mhm.
You know, giving them having them devote all their resources to Trump. That at this point in the election would be pretty detrimental.
Right. Especially since we've seen the numbers. And for those of you at home who have not seen the numbers, Harris is outspending Donald Trump by a significantly wide margin in swing states. In some places, he's not spending any money.
Yeah, yeah.
And
They
so the
I'm
question is,
really hopeful. Like what I'm really hopeful for is that when/if Harris gets into office, she will change her tune on the Israel Palestine issue, but I'm not too optimistic about it. I would love to see that happen. I have a small place in my brain that thinks it's going to happen, but realistically, I don't know that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that
yeah,
the closest comparison we can draw that I've seen people making is to Hubert Humphrey, who was Lyndon B. Johnson's vice president. He ran for president in what would that have been? It was 1968, I think. Must have been 1968. And that was in the wake of the Vietnam War, which was obviously, super. It was really unpopular domestically, especially among uh, the left wing base. And he basically refused to break from Lyndon B. Johnson's administration, who was in full support of the Vietnam War, right up until the last like month of his campaign. When his polls started to improve a little bit when he did that. He still lost. He lost to Nixon. Um, but I think it's a similar dynamic where he and now Kamala Harris are wary of breaking from the current administration. It's similar. It draws other similar comparisons too, because both Lyndon B. Johnson and Joe Biden declined to seek a second term in office.
for
So
wildly different reasons, I might
yeah,
add.
yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. I think it's kind of funny being a political science major, because the whole thing is like we're supposed to take the scientific method to these things, but there's like no, we don't get lab analyses, right?
Right.
We don't
We
get we
don't
don't get
have
to test things in a vacuum.
we don't get to take a bunch of underpaid grad students, lock them in an abandoned park, and watch what happens
Yeah,
when we
yeah.
introduce communism. We don't get the same we don't get the same luxury as other scientists.
Exactly,
Uh,
exactly. But I think that parallel is interesting, and I mean, if you were looking at that, I think it would be clear that, or at least indicate that, like maybe you should be breaking from this campaign. But we'll see when we get closer to the election. I do think that there's hope in that. Like, I don't think that she's the same. I mean, Joe Biden is a Zionist through and through, and he's from an era of politics where you could never go wrong with giving your full endorsement to Israel, right? Like you can never be too pro-Israel in Joe Biden's era. And that's probably something that I think that's something that he's developed from like a political lens. Like, I think he's probably really confused that people want him to do anything against them. But he's also personally, I think, really invested in Israel having a state and also being able to do basically whatever they want um, to the
Yeah,
Palestinian territories. And I don't
I've
think
had
Kamala
this
Harris.
conversation with people. I understand why Biden feels the way he does about certain things. For example, Israel, because of when he was raised, the kind of era of politics he was in. But I don't want that. Like I'd like to see someone who has the mindset of someone in my demographic. I'd
Yeah.
like to see someone who has current mindsets and current upbringings.
Yeah, and that's why we can't have a 1,000-year-old white guy running our country.
I think there should be an age cap, honestly.
Yeah, my parents brought up ageism against Biden, but like I don't think that's valid. Like, come on, man.
I don't think it's about his age necessarily. I think it's about the factors surrounding his age. Like
What, you
I
mean like how
said,
he
like with
can't
his
complete a
upbringing.
sentence? What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like when you get to a certain age, some people people age differently.
Yeah.
It depends on what you do throughout your life. It depends on a lot of different things. But at a certain age, everyone's brain starts to deteriorate.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see someone whose brain has not yet deteriorated to that point.
Yeah, I mean Bernie Sanders could still be president. That guy still got it. I don't know if I want it
I'm a
necessarily.
huge Bernie supporter, but I think he's too old.
I
I
think
mean,
so.
I'd probably
He's
say the
way
same.
too-
But like, if we're talking like mentally, like he's not the same as Biden. He's so much
No.
more with it than Biden.
Yeah, I agree.
I think though I think in Harris's defense that Harris has really proved that she's an incredibly intelligent person. I trust her political instincts over mine. It's one of those things where we'll have to like sort of wait and see and keep up the pressure before something changes, because if she is going to be different about it, it doesn't make sense to talk about it now before election day.
Yeah. Like it's the same thing I've been saying. I understand why she is saying and doing the things she's saying and doing. I just don't like it. I don't like the way politics necessarily works currently. I'd like to see a lot of change, but I understand that it can't get done immediately. And you have to appease certain groups. I think she's doing a little much to appease certain groups, but that's why I'm not running for a political stance, a political place.
Not yet,
I mean
anyway. We'll see in the future.
that's the state of democracy in a two-party system, right?
Yeah, that's one of my biggest problems is that we're a two-party system. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, we can do a whole episode on that too.
All right, so for our last big topic for today, just within this last week, the DOJ has announced a series of investigations into Russian disinformation campaigns across the United States, including its use of some high-profile right-wing influencers across social media like YouTube and Twitter.
Yeah, so the DOJ has accused Russia of laundering money, nearly $10 million through some shell companies, and using that to influence high-profile right-wing commentators to take a more pro-Russia stance.
Which is something we saw immediately when the war in Ukraine began. And I think it's nice that the DOJ has sort of come over its blind spot in regards to it was a joke at Tim Pool's expense.
You mean bald spots?
Yeah, bald spots. Over because it feels like some of this stuff that they've been doing is borderline illegal. And the fact that like there is now proof that individuals like Tim Pool were taking an incredible amount of money from the Russian government to peddle Russian lies, it feels incredibly vindicating, and it's nice to see consequences, at least the threat of consequences, because you're watching them scatter like like rats. I mean, like Tim Pool is rocking the Ukrainian flag in his Twitter handle now. I mean, even Elon Musk has softened some of his more obvious Kremlin talking points Because Russian misinformation has been doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of poisoning the well that is American discourse. I mean, just last week, Putin announced that he was personally hoping Harris would win, which we all know is a bunch of baloney. Specifically just to give right wingers more talking points. And I think it's about time somebody did something about these very well coordinated, well paid misinformation campaigns, because that's what they are. Is they're foreign intelligence psyops.
Yeah. So the biggest people indicted or as not indicted, but identified as people taking this money, were Tim Pool and Dave Rubin, both pretty big right wing commentators. Tim Pool especially. I think he has like a 1.5 million subscriber count on YouTube, and he yeah, there's a few others. Benny Johnson, who I'm not as familiar with. I've seen him on Twitter a few times. They were taking, so Tim Pool at least was taking about $400,000 a month from this shell company. $100,000 per video that he would release 4 times a month. And I think Dave Rubin's contract was $5 million a year to post videos on this company's media site. Tenet is the company.
You know what, guys? I got a question for you before we get into more of the details.
Yeah.
You ever feel like you missed out on making a whole lot of money for not a whole lot of work?
We're left wingers,
All
John.
the time.
I know, but sometimes the $5 million.
But if we just didn't have as strong of morals, it would be so easy.
listen, $5 million a year, I could definitely pay off at least half of my student loans, and maybe think about getting an apartment with a window.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Yeah, living large over here. Compliments of Vladimir Putin. But yeah, no. But seriously, go ahead.
Yeah.
Continue.
So today Tim Pool has been on a tweet tirade. Slava Ukraini, he said today. He had an interview with Ben Shapiro, which I thought was hilarious for a number of reasons. But so he said that his channel that was posting these things was not inherently a political podcast. This podcast was called The Culture War. Obviously a right-wing like term. And he has 40 videos that are unavailable that I can't see right now. I assume that's because he's taking them down. But the ones from 10 months ago have titles like "This May Be the Last Election," Tim Pool and Cenk Uygur, Cenk running for president in 2024, election fraud, big tech and Trump 2024, rise and fall of Project Veritas, the weaponization and corruption of the DOJ, surrogacy, men's rights, and modern parenting. So the whole idea that like this podcast wasn't political in nature is absurd. I mean, it's crazy to me that he would say that.
Also, let's briefly mention the fact that, boy, how far the Young Turks have fallen in the last 8 years.
Yeah.
I mean, were they always like that? Probably.
Hey, let's not start our own culture war here.
That's no. We're not taking pot shots at others. That's maybe like my favorite thing to do.
Maybe we can. Week. I have a soft spot for Cenk that I have a hard time. I mean, like I can't really stand to listen to him too much anymore. But
just don't ask him about the Armenian genocide, right?
Anyways, yeah. So he said that. So Tim Pool said that. There's a couple other lines. Oh yeah, he also said that like him taking this money like wasn't that big of a deal and like wouldn't have impacted his like views. $400,000 a
Which
month.
is a ridiculous
Yeah,
statement.
and
Right.
he goes like, yeah, I don't think people realize how much money can be made in the podcasting sphere to where like this actually isn't that much money. There's like 10 people in the world that are making that kind of money podcasting.
We are not any of them.
Yeah. And I mean, we're not. You can point to any left wing podcast. They're not making that much money. They're not. They're making.
Yeah.
We're not
They're
making
making
any
a
money.
fraction.
We're
of that.
losing money doing this. At least I am.
I watched a really entertaining segment on the Majority Report with Sam Cedar. Shout them out. Great show. But they were going over this Tim Pool scandal. And they dove a lot more into how, so right now, these right-wing influencers are being labeled as victims from this because they didn't know that it was the Russian government doing this, which is probably true, or at least like ostensibly true. Like they probably weren't told that it was the Russian government. But
Yeah, legally they're kind of out of trouble.
yeah,
They're not being charged with anything as long as there's no proof that they knew it was Russian money. They say they didn't know, and so there's not really any way that they can be held liable for that, which I think is good and unfortunate.
yeah. I mean, I'm honestly like not that concerned about it. He's gonna take a bigger hit in the culture war. But so I don't know. Sam Cedar he dove a little more into the indictment and how this stuff was carried out, and how like just like how mind numbing it is that they would have been duped by this. Like the Russians basically they formulated this fake character that was supposed to be this like economist or operating like in Belgium, in London. But his name, he doesn't get any hits on the internet because he's not a real person. And so there was this whole there was a little back and forth between Dave Rubin and Tim Pool and this media company being like, hey, like we don't really know who this person is, like can you provide some more information? And they pulled out like his cover, his CV, and his and like some blurb from like a magazine that may or may not exist that basically said that like he was an experienced entrepreneur that was operated mostly in Belgium and London, and he's interested in investing money to make the world a better place. And he's also interested in social justice causes. So like the most vague little blurb you could possibly put out there. And his cover letter had him graduating from the London School of Economics with honors. And then working at like these big banks and having these like very high profile positions, to where like his name would return something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like these colleges are going to keep track of their people that graduate, especially those with honors. And for him to not be even listed, like, for his name not to come up as being associated with these banks is absurd. And so Dave Rubin looks through all this and sees this super fishy, vague blurb and this CV letter that should really raise some eyebrows. And he responds with how he was concerned about his interest in social justice. And that was what spiked his ears a little. That's what made his ears go stand up and go, I don't know about this one. No question as to how him getting paid $5 million a year could possibly be economically viable. I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. And anyone podcasting making that much money, like something fishy's going on. I mean,
Please let it happen to us. Please.
Yeah, I'm honestly not like I am a little more surprised that he asked about it, and I'm not very surprised if slash that he didn't look him up, like Google him. I think when you're getting paid that amount of money, you're just kind of, yeah, you're generally understanding that, like, I'm not going to bite the hand that feeds me. I don't want to ask too many questions. I'm not going to look into this too hard. I want that much money.
Yeah. Yeah. So I highly recommend anyone who's interested to look into to check out the Majority Report with Sam Cedar, who had a really good dive into this. Very entertaining. Great guys. Love the show. And I don't know, it was great. It was great. So for further information, I would refer to them.
That's right. They're gonna poach the 5 people we have listening to this.
And that's right. That's right.
Which includes our girlfriends. That's gonna be so embarrassing.
Boosting those numbers.
Yeah, that's right. Hi, Annabelle. Thanks for listening. All right. Well, I think that's everything we had for today.
Yep, I think so
Unless
too.
anything has anything fun they'd like to share before we sign off.
I was wondering, non-politically, unless, did you guys have anything you wanted to add on the politics of this before I ask?
No,
Nope, go ahead.
So what do you guys do for fun? Like, what are you guys doing to de-stress from all this?
It's funny you say
right
you
now.
asked that.
Right now, I am.
Go ahead, John.
I myself personally, I have been playing Star Wars Outlaws. I am currently, actually, right this second, staring at a pause screen of me on a speeder bike zooming across the dunes of Tatooine. Right, I'm living my best life. I've been alternating between that and Stardew Valley as I wait for my job to begin next week.
Nice.
I know, I got addicted. No, I was waiting for my copy of Star Wars Outlaws to arrive from Amazon because I had to go physical for some reason. And I was like, you know what? To pass the time, I'm going to try Stardew again. And then that was a mistake.
Stardew is amazing.
We should play. What do you play on?
I play on my PC.
Yeah. You gotta. We'll exchange details later.
Yes.
Well, I've been earlier today. I was getting my butt handed to me in Dark Souls 3. I played through all of Elden Ring. And so now I'm working my way back through the franchise, and stressful games. They're not easy. Yeah. And right after this pod, I'm gonna go play some Magic the Gathering. So that's
I love that.
That's my day.
And be sure to check out last week's episode, Fascism the Gathering.
That's right.
I have been playing golf.
Whoa.
Which I'm not good at, but it's really fun.
You should bring that up in a debate sometime. How you could totally be your opponent in golf.
I totally could. I'm not good, but I could beat anybody.
I believe it. I believe it. You can do a lot of damage with a golf club.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been playing a little badminton with my 10-year-old sister,
nice.
Which is really fun because at least I'm better than her. And trying to rollerblade.
Nice.
Again, not very good at it, but trying.
Rollerblading is fun.
Yeah.
Big fan of that.
It hurts your ankles, but it's a vibe.
I'm looking for some volleyball leagues to join too.
Ooh, that's good.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Never really played.
For some reason, all I can think about is the volleyball game from Top Gun. Whenever anybody talks about it, it's just stuck in my head now. I haven't even seen the movie. Anyway.
All right.
Yeah, that all
That's it
sounds
for
like a
this
lot of fun.
episode.
Thank you guys for listening.
And we'll see you next week.